Hi again, and thank you for tuning in to Marketing Automation Made Simple podcast. This is your host, Jovana, and I am on a mission to simplify the world of marketing and automation for small business owners around the world so they can save time, money, and scale their businesses faster. My guest today is Reid Robinson, who is the AI product lead at Zapier. My listeners would be very familiar with Zapier. Zapier is a tool that has helped thousands of businesses automate anything. Whatever you can dream up, you can automate with Zapier. We've helped hundreds of our customers set up Zapier, and so I'm super excited to have Reid on the show to share his wisdom with us, especially when it comes to automation and AI. Thanks for joining me, Reid. Could you please share a bit more about yourself, your background, and finally help us clarify how to pronounce Zapier properly?
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on. I'll start by saying it's Zapier. I used to often say Zapier makes you happier. And for the more, fellow techie nerds out there, one of the reasons it's spelt the way it is spelt is because this way it has API in the middle of the name. So there you go. But yeah, so Zapier makes you happier. It's a little mnemonic device if it helps. And yeah, a bit about me. So I am the lead product manager here, working on a lot of AI things at Zapier. I'm also what they call a boomerang to Zapier. So I spent initially 2 years at Zapier working in the world of partnerships. I came prior to there from Hootsuite again in the social marketing category of tools. And at Zapier, managed a lot of our relationships with Facebook, Google, Salesforce, and was really just trying to make sure that, the top apps that our users were leveraging really heavily had the best integrations and best experiences possible for that. And, marketing is a huge use case of what we focus on. So I spent a lot of my time thinking about that. I left Zapier briefly to do my own startup in the world of NFT that kind of came from a hackathon that I did with another coworker of mine. And then we left, ran it full time, and sold the business in late 2022. But it was actually that world that introduced me to kind of what generative AI is today, particularly in the art side of things, because we were seeing a lot of artists just create really impressive pieces leveraging Midjourney and Dolly and Stable Diffusion. And so it was really fascinating to me. And then when I was, thinking about next steps, Zapier had popped up, and my role became really working on our teams for what we do on AI R&D. But these days I work across our kind of partnerships with AI and products in AI. So kind of a hodgepodge of a role at the moment, but it allows me to learn a lot about how our users, particularly marketers, are incorporating AI into automations.
Oh, that's a fascinating background. So yeah, I was going to ask you about Zapier and how Zapier started, because I remember when I started Bumper Leads in 2016, it was something that was just emerging, especially with business owners. This is like, nobody knew about Zapier, nobody knew about automations. And I remember teaching a lot of business owners about Zapier, and that I had to visualize for them that Zapier is like the middleman between two apps. If we want to make two apps talk to each other, we need something called Zapier. Zapier. That's my pronunciation. And so how did Zapier start? You tell us more about Zapier's background.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm honestly not 100% sure. I know I've heard the story before from our founders, but I know, it started a number of years ago. I mean, Zapier is not one of the, let's say, younger startups, if you will. I think it's from 2011. And so back then, you're in a state of tech that was very different from how things look today. But even then, I think the founders, Brian, Mike, and Wade, had observed that there should be some sort of intermediate layer between web apps that you're using. And there really wasn't. And it was it was a lot of manually copying and pasting when you wanted things to move from one place to another. And that was a big pain point, particularly because, it's only so fast you can copy and paste. And so, that was, I think, the very, very early days of Zapier for that. Since then, Zapier's evolved quite a bit. For instance, one of the probably biggest things in the last couple months is Zapier shifted from being just an automation platform to also include some first-party tools that we know go really well hand in hand with automation, such as, a database tool called Tables, a website builder and form tool called Interfaces. So really expanding into trying to get like that end-to-end experience for how you're leveraging workflows and automation.
So what are some of the ways that businesses use Zapier these days?
Ooh, you want us to talk just AI, or all right, let's start non-AI, and I'll give you an AI example along the way. So to start, we think marketing automation, probably one of the most obvious ones that comes up often is lead capture and lead management. So let's say you're doing Facebook lead ads, Google lead ads, you have Typeform embedded somewhere in your website, right? I think I forget how many hundreds of form tools exist on Zapier. It never ceases to amaze me just how many forms a business can have. But really, probably one of the core use cases is getting data from those forms into wherever you need it and whatever you need to happen with that. And so some simple examples are, let's say, every time you get a new lead ad or lead response from a Facebook lead ad, you might want that to not only get logged to your CRM or your Google Sheet or some sort of database you're keeping track of everything, but you also might want to automatically ping your sales team or yourself, right? You might just want that to be texted to you instead of just you waiting 24 hours to, check out who responded. You could even do things like automating that first email. So you can say, hey, thanks for reaching out. Do you want to book a time to chat? Here's my, link to do that. And you can start to automate everything as simple as that. Yeah, and there's so many things. I love Zapier because it's one of the platforms that you could the more you learn about, the more you're capable of doing. And it really is essentially being able to build software without having any clue how to build software. Particularly because you can do things like filters and you can do forks in the road for your data and all sorts of things that make it really powerful. But definitely, I would say today requires some bit of learning to get the most of that. On the AI side of things, I'll continue that example. One of the really earliest things we saw on that side was using generative AI like ChatGPT to personalize those first touch emails. So let's say you had, again, Facebook lead form, but this time what you could now do is you say, hey, ChatGPT, here is some information about this lead. Here is some information about my business. Here is like 2 or 3 examples of emails that I've sent in the past that got good responses. Can you help me write a new email to this particular user or lead? And it will attempt to write a pretty well personalized email. And you could then send that email right away, or you could even have it do like a draft in your inbox so that you could then come into your inbox, review your drafts, edit things as you want, and send them right off. But really saving you quite a bit of time and just allowing you to personalize at scale. And particularly if you're a small business, you're probably not using one of like the massive marketing automation tool, like marketing platform tools that have these kinds of capabilities built into them. And so just being able to have like a simple instruction to a tool like ChatGPT in the middle of that workflow has been really powerful. Anyway, I could talk about use cases all day for that, but I'll leave it at that for now.
I know what you mean. Like once you get started, it's one of those things you just want to keep building more and more. It's like, what else can I do with Zapier? I know that we have a senior systems integrator. He loves Zapier because he always discovers something new, and everything that our client dreams about and thinks of in terms of the problems, you can solve it with Zapier. And one solution that comes to mind that we recently did for a client is they wanted to automate their certification process. So they have an offline course, actually a hybrid course, and they wanted to make sure that once a survey is filled, that's a trigger to then go to the instructor of the course to mark yes, pass, whatever. And then once they're passed, issue the certificate automatically populated with their full name. And we did that through just using Google Slides, Zapier, and I think ActiveCampaign as well for the data. So yeah, you can just imagine anything you want and create that. I still haven't played with the AI bit with Zapier, which would be very exciting to do. I can see it would save heaps of time.
Yeah, and there's simple ones that make sense for it. There's complex ones. A big one as well that comes up in marketing is really content generation is probably the number one use case we see. So that's, I have an idea for a blog content, help me like get to a first draft. Or it's oftentimes too, hey, here is my blog content. Can you help me do first drafts of my social promotion posts, right? Like you could have steps for Twitter, step for LinkedIn, and so to really personalize what you can do to your own brand voice as best you can. So yeah, there's a lot of fun with how we've seen that. Another really interesting one I love is especially just, you deal with a lot of unstructured data in things, and getting it to a structured format can be really annoying sometimes. For anybody listening to this and is dealing with people emailing you for inquiries and you just wish that they had filled in a form instead. Like that's that type of use case where you can take a big email or big blob of text and ask it to extract really specific information. Doing things like that with these AI steps is also really cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, actually. I was going to ask you, in terms of using Zapier, I know when you go in, log into Zapier, you have to obviously click here, click there, create this trigger, action, filters. There's a lot of clicks that you've got to make. Is Zapier looking into maybe AI solutions to save us time, to build apps?
Yeah, so good timing. We just recently released and have been doing quite a lot of iteration on something we call the AI Zap Builder. Probably not the greatest name, but essentially it does allow you to just use your own words to describe the type of workflow you want to set up, and it will attempt to draft that for you. Yeah, if you go to the Zapier, if you just log into Zapier, I think you see it right away these days. I think that's now on for all users. And yeah, that uses obviously some AI components under the hood that, yeah, it does that. And even like an advanced user like myself, I've started to use that, but sometimes I just want it to get like the framework for everything I want out, and then I can go in and fill everything in. One of the other probably most useful things is we added a lot of, and you'll see this as you go through the product, a lot of like AI tools that are relevant for each step of the process. One of the things that a lot of users get really confused on is this concept of field mapping, which essentially is this concept that, let's say, again, your new lead form from Facebook gets into, let's say, sends your sales team a message in Slack. You would need to manually, like a Facebook lead comes with, I don't know, like 50 different fields, if you will, right? Like there's 50 different bits of information, even down to as granular things as like the ad ID, which might not be relevant to your sales team, right? So you need to specify, that Slack message should include the user's name, the answers to certain questions, things like that. And we added a capability you'll see in the product as well that allows you to guess those field pairs with AI as well. That's been really helpful for a number of users. We also did a bunch of other things like AI formatter is a great one. Oftentimes when you're dealing with data, it's just not in the right format. And it's as simple as sometimes you just need to like split the text based on commas, right? Or sometimes you need to combine some text. And Zapier has a lot of really great tools in a particular app called Formatter that allows you to do this. But we also acknowledge that that tool is difficult to figure out exactly what you need and how to use it. And now if you're trying to format data, you can actually click this like AI button and you just say like, I need to split this text based on commas. And then it'll actually build the formatter step you need for you and it'll like run a test so you can see like, did this do the right job or not? So yeah, we're trying to add a lot of these bigger pieces as well as smaller pieces to just make thinking about what you can do on the platform easier, but then also getting from your idea to your final state faster and easier as well.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I was just remembering a client that we had early on where they asked us to scrape the text from email, like just some general email they would receive in their Gmail, whatever they used, and scrape it for a particular word. And I remember going, how do you do that? And Zapier had a solution to this problem. And they wanted to trigger certain automation in ActiveCampaign to be sent based on the words that were used in this email. And was that the format? I forgot the name of that tool that was used.
Yeah, it's probably, parser, formatter. Yeah, there are a lot of tools in Zapier that do make it really helpful. But again, it's one of those things you just got to learn a little bit about how to use that. And we're trying to make all of that much easier particularly by bringing some AI components into the experience so that you can use a bit more of your own words to describe what you need instead of having to remember that this particular app had this particular functionality that you think should solve that need, because that's not easy. And our goal at the end of the day is really to make automation work for everybody. And we know in order to do that, it needs to be pretty easy.
I agree. It has to be pretty easy, simple. But how many apps do you now connect? Yeah, like thousands, or I've seen a
Yeah,
lot being
Dave
added.
Zapier has 6,000, I believe. Yeah, just over 6,000 apps on the platform. It is a lot. We add a lot every day, even. And on top of that, a lot of users will find out that, if you use a private app or your company has a specific one, we also allow users to add their own to the platform without it being a public integration. So we have a lot of, particularly our more, I don't know, like larger company customers will have a lot of more private integrations that they want to add as well.
Yes, yes, we've been in situations where we had to use custom solutions. So it's basically if there is a native integration with certain apps and platforms, Zapier will make that public, but it could also be native in a private, like a native integration. And then when there is no app integration, can user actually connect that through FTP servers and maybe do another integration?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can absolutely use like webhooks, particularly if it's a trigger or an action thing. There's like if an app supports webhooks, if you don't know what that means, I don't know, ask ChatGPT for now. But essentially, I like to think about it like sending letters like sending very particular formatted letters in the mail. Certain apps can send letters, and certain ones can receive letters. And Zapier does both sides of that very well. So depending on the application you're using, they might be able to just like send Zapier a letter with the information you need. So that's probably number one. Number two, I'd say Zapier does have like an open developer platform. And I know that probably sounds scary to a lot of, theme being today marketing, but I'll say that someone like myself, I'm not a developer. I've never taken little to zero ever coding classes, but we do have like a visual builder to our integration tools that just allow you to like kind of copy and paste things from an API documentation. So if there is a tool you're using that does have open API, like does have documentation that you can see, there's a strong possibility you can figure out how to add the integration to Zapier for yourself, which often helps a lot of users as well. Because there's an endless number of integrations.
Yes.
Out there.
I guess you have to use it every day to really learn and develop all the skills that you need for Zapier alone. So Zapier is considered, is it no code platform? Yeah. So that's why it's easy to use, isn't it?
Yes, that's the hope. And I think it's less about, I think we have a big goal, at least to make it not so much that you need to learn so much about how to use everything. I think the bigger thing, most users who we see go from like a 0 to 1 and then a 1 to like 100 state of how much they're automating and how powerful those automations are really less learning about our platform in particular and more learning about just the data that their business handles and the processes that their business handles and what they could be doing to make those processes more efficient. It's like a little bit of a different way of thinking about your business than most people default to, I'd say. And so I think some of the exercises that help is just like, if you zoom out for a second and think about like all of the manual time you are spending doing certain things, or all of the times you wish you had information from one system in a different system, and how that would have helped you handle XYZ situation, and then just trying to see if that's possible, right? I think that's the bigger mental step that I see a lot of our users, like when you go from a more just getting started user who's learned one use case versus one who has it in like 100 different spots across the business, is this they're thinking about how their business operates and how the data in their business kind of lives in different places and how to get it into the right place at the right time.
Cool. I wanted to talk to you about AI because everyone's talking about AI. AI has been probably in the development, in the works with the software companies for years, decades, but only recently, thanks to ChatGPT, became a bit more sexy, and a lot of people are taking on AI. What does the future hold for AI and automations? What are your thoughts on AI?
I'd say probably I think for us, to rewind for a second, one of the biggest things is for companies like Zapier and many other companies is how can maybe even companies like your own, right? Is how can you leverage AI within your own experience for your end users or your end customers, whatever, just to make it easier to interact with your business? Companies like us, we're seeing this in ways that, I talked about today, where we have like, these kind of components where you just use natural language and it teaches you kind of what you need to do in our product. But for other businesses, we're seeing a lot of users adopt we have an AI chatbot tool that allows you to embed a chatbot onto your website. We're seeing an incredible amount of adoption there because it allows you to also upload like documentation from your business. So you can give it some like information there to make it maybe a better little like customer support portal or a just questions about, if you're a service business, like what are the services you offer and how does those engagements typically work? Like some of those really common questions, I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, yeah, I wish I could just tell a system or upload common examples like upload your FAQ. Like if you had an FAQ spreadsheet, upload that to a chatbot, put that chatbot on your website, right? Like those are, I think, the state that I think we'll see more and more, and getting those tools to be like really, really good at what they do and really easy. The future evolution that I'm actually probably most excited about does particularly come from like AI's ability to help generate code for users. I know, again, that probably sounds daunting to a lot of folks, but really, I think what the excitement here should be for most listeners is the fact that if all of a sudden you have the ability to generate decent code, you have the ability to generate software and generate whatever you want. And all of a sudden, your ability to go from thought or idea to a fully baked product that maybe only works for you is becoming possible. And I get really excited about what the future of tech looks like for that in a very like personalized application, personalized systems, maybe even personalized tools for your own customers, right? All of that becomes really exciting to me because I think it also puts a lot of power into the hands of people who previously didn't. Like no code tooling is so exciting because you can do things you never thought you were capable of doing. I think the next step in that is kind of this like AI coding components. And we see this ourselves was we have a coding step in Zapier where you can run code. The adoption of that since the release of ChatGPT really took off, and we added an AI helper step right in the middle of that. And so we know users are finding a lot of value in that already. And I get really excited about what the future looks like for, just giving more power to do in the hands of business operators and everybody.
Yeah, more power to the user. And it saves us a lot of time, doesn't it? I'm guessing, I'm not a coder myself, but coding would be such a time-consuming job. Then you have to test it, then you have to find all the faults. Why is this not working? Just to re-engineer the process, go back. I can see any AI coming in and helping that process move along. So
Yeah.
is this something that you're going to be talking on topic of AI at the upcoming Active Campaign Leap Day Extravaganza event?
Yeah, it is. I'll be talking specifically about leveraging ChatGPT in an automation. It's probably like a really great session on just getting started with how do you do that. I think the way I often explain this is when you're used to using ChatGPT today, you go to it, you type something, you ask it for an output. Kind of imagine having that run while you sleep. And how can you take advantage of doing that? So if you're interested in that, come out, listen to that session. And yeah, message me on LinkedIn. I would love what people find valuable from conversations like this, from the session. So really excited to hear what people think about that and what they try.
Yeah, great. I'm going to attend that session too. I want to learn more about Zapier AI and what we can do because it is an exciting time to be alive, basically. The future. I mean, I remember my first tech was Chat Merc on, Merc when it came out in the 1995, 96. I was chatting with strangers from Canada. I was only like 14 or something. I was in New Zealand at the time. And so that was my experience with chat. And then there was Ask Jeeves was another one. Ask Jeeves didn't really last long.
Yeah, the one for me on that side was Smarter Child. So the Americans here, the millennial Americans in particular, I think in Gen Y might remember that one. It was one that lived in AIM or America Online Instant Messenger, long name. That was like a really, really, really simple chatbot that existed there. I'm really never sure what happened to them, but yeah, Smarter Child was the very first one.
Never heard of it, but yeah, the industry has just moved so much, so fast, and it's really hard to keep up sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think someone said a great quote, and I wish I remembered it exactly, but it essentially came down to keeping your head down and not getting too distracted by just the plethora of new technology and new tools that is coming out right now, and really focusing on, it's probably even more important than ever to remain focused on what your like biggest problems and biggest opportunities are, and what tools are going to help you solve that. And if it means you don't learn about some new fancy tool, it's probably still going to be there or not in 6 months, right? And you work on whatever is most important to you. And that, yeah, for someone like me who lives in this world, so it's very good advice, because there is like a nonstop flood
Oh,
of like new
very
tools,
much.
new techniques to try.
It's such a fascinating world to be in the software game now. So I think we're coming to the end of our show. I really enjoyed talking with you, Reid. Where could our listeners learn more about you, Zapier, and presentation at the Active Campaign Leap Day Extravaganza event?
Yeah, first off, join the Leap Day Extravaganza. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Such
They
a
got a lot of
mouthful.
great content. It is. That's probably number one. Number two, yeah, LinkedIn. Look up Reid Robinson, Zapier on LinkedIn. Yeah, I post a lot of tutorial stuff. I actually just posted a video on how to do something within a GPT using Zapier. So I try to share like some of the more interesting things we're playing around with and learnings that we have. So yeah, if it's interesting to you, follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Sounds awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Reid, and I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.